The city that speaks in English. A journey you feel, not study. The moment the city begins to speak. It starts without warning. You walk out into the city thinking it will be another ordinary day. And suddenly you notice that everything around you is speaking. Not in your native language, not in words you fully understand, but in a rhythm that feels alive. The traffic lights blink in patterns that sound like intonation. The air carries the voices of strangers, blending into something that feels like music. You hear fragments, greetings, laughter, an argument in the distance, and your mind starts to dance with them. It's not about understanding yet. It's about feeling the pulse beneath the noise. For the first time, English doesn't sound foreign. It feels like movement, like motion. You realize you've been studying English like a problem to solve, when it's actually a rhythm to follow. The city becomes your teacher, not through textbooks, but through repetition, sound, emotion, context. It speaks through neon lights, through announcements in the subway, through a stranger asking for the time. And as you walk, you begin to understand something that no class ever told you. Language is alive because people are. Every street corner becomes a sentence, every crowd a paragraph, every small sound a chance to listen differently. You stop trying to translate. You start absorbing. You begin to understand that fluency is not about knowing the rules. It's about noticing the patterns, how people connect, how sound carries meaning, how silence creates space. The city's voice changes depending on where you go. Soft in the morning, sharp at noon, slow and reflective at night. Each tone carries a lesson. The rhythm of footsteps replaces grammar drills. The tone of a vendor replaces vocabulary lists. You walk, listen, respond. And suddenly, without effort, the city begins to make sense. Fluency doesn't arrive in a classroom. It appears quietly while you're living, while you're not thinking, while you're just being. That's when English stops being a subject and becomes an experience. The language beneath the noise. There's something hypnotic about city noise. Most people ignore it, but you start to listen differently. Beneath the layers of sound, footsteps, laughter, car horns, there's a rhythm that ties everything together. You realize English has the same pattern. It's not just sound, it's coordination, timing, connection. Every "how are you" lands with a rhythm that carries emotion. Every "I don't know" has weight depending on the moment. The city shows you that language is never static. It's alive and always adapting. You hear a group of tourists speaking near a monument. Their sentences overlap. Some are wrong, some perfect, but all of them flow. No one stops to analyze grammar. They're communicating. That's when it hits you. Language exists to move meaning, not to prove knowledge. The street performers around you use rhythm to survive. Drummers, guitarists, singers, they keep people listening not with precision, but with flow. That's what English truly is. A performance of connection. You don't memorize it, you join it. Even silence teaches something. The pause before a reply. The way someone sighs before saying, "Never mind." The hesitation before, "I'm fine." These small details are grammar in motion. The city whispers them if you're quiet enough to hear. And then, in the middle of all this noise, you start hearing yourself. You catch your own thoughts forming in English. Short, incomplete, but natural. You don't correct them. You follow them. That's when you understand. Fluency starts the moment you stop correcting yourself and start communicating imperfectly but freely. The sound of human connection. English doesn't belong to dictionaries. It lives between people. At a coffee shop, a stranger asks you, "How's your day?" It's a small question, yet it opens a world of meaning. It's not about the words. It's about tone, warmth, rhythm. You answer without thinking, and for a moment, you feel part of something bigger. The city becomes a conversation. People don't just speak English, they express it. You notice how smiles replace whole sentences, how laughter translates across any border. Fluency isn't what you say, it's what you convey. When you listen long enough, you begin to predict emotions before words. You sense frustration in the speed of speech, calmness in slower tones, irony in rhythm. You begin to understand people, not just their language. And that's when learning turns into empathy. Each day your ear sharpens. You can tell who's local, who's visiting, who's nervous. You don't need subtitles anymore because your instincts fill the gaps. You've entered a new phase, not hearing, but feeling. The more you connect, the more you belong. You realize that English isn't something you learn to impress others. It's something you use to reach them. The day you stop translating, there's a moment every learner remembers, when they realize they've stopped thinking in their native language. It doesn't come with fanfare. It sneaks in like sunlight through a window. One day, you order coffee, and your thoughts form directly in English. You answer quickly, naturally, like breathing. You walk away and realize you didn't translate a thing. That's when English starts living inside you. You no longer see it as foreign. It becomes the voice of your second self, a version that sees the world through new rhythms and meanings. You think in shorter sentences. You understand faster. You feel lighter. The city helps this transformation. It doesn't slow down for you, and that's its gift. It forces you to adapt, to trust your intuition, to follow the rhythm instead of control it. You understand that fluency isn't about perfection, it's about flow. You stop studying, you start living, and the moment you let go of fear, you begin to belong to the language you once chased. Lessons hidden in mistakes. The city doesn't let you hide. You'll mispronounce words, you'll forget phrases, you'll say in when you mean on. But no one laughs. They respond. They help. You learn. Mistakes stop being failures and become tools. Proof that you're brave enough to communicate. You realize that native speakers make mistakes too, just in different ways. You hear a street vendor mix tenses, a tourist misplace a word, and no one cares. Meaning survives. That's the secret. Communication doesn't collapse when grammar breaks. It bends. Each mistake teaches rhythm, context, tone. You stop fearing errors and start using them to grow. Because fluency isn't about avoiding mistakes, it's about recovering quickly from them. And slowly, the fear that once froze your speech disappears. You stop chasing perfect English. You start chasing connection, the rhythm of confidence. Confidence isn't volume, it's rhythm. The city shows you this every day. Some people speak softly yet carry authority. Others talk fast but say nothing. Real fluency is rhythm. The steady flow of meaning, not the number of words. As you walk, you notice your speech changing. You pause naturally, emphasize what matters. Let silence carry weight. You begin to sound fluent not because you've mastered vocabulary, but because your rhythm aligns with the language's heartbeat. English lives in movement, in gestures, in tone, in confidence that comes from trust. When you stop fearing silence, your words begin to breathe. The city rewards confidence not in sound, but in presence. You no longer look for permission to speak. You just do. The moment English feels like home, there comes a quiet moment when you realize you no longer feel like an outsider. The signs, the sounds, the voices, they all feel familiar now. You start greeting people naturally, reacting instinctively. English isn't a skill anymore. It's part of your identity. You remember how strange it once felt to listen without understanding. Now it feels stranger not to. You've crossed an invisible line from learning to belonging. At that moment, the city feels different. It's not just a place. It's a reflection of your growth. You've built a home not made of walls, but of words. When the city goes silent, night falls, and the noise fades. The city that once overwhelmed you now hums softly in the distance. You sit on a bench and listen. Not for English, but for silence. Because silence is also part of fluency. It's where understanding lives. You think back on everything. The confusion, the mistakes, the breakthroughs. You realize that learning English was never about mastering words. It was about discovering yourself through sound. The city keeps speaking even when you don't. You've learned to listen, to feel, to connect. And that's what fluency truly is. Not the ability to speak perfectly, but the ability to understand deeply. You stand up and start walking again. The city speaks softly now, and for the first time, you're speaking with it. The voice inside you. It happens quietly. The city's voice becomes your own. The words that once felt borrowed now rise from within you, shaped by experience, softened by memory. You start to notice that English no longer arrives as sound from outside. It flows from somewhere inside, from that hidden space where thoughts turn into rhythm. You walk through the same streets, yet they sound different because now you're not just listening, you're answering. A woman at a food stand asks if you want sugar. You reply before you think. The sentence leaves your mouth effortlessly, shaped not by study, but by instinct. The moment passes quickly, but it stays with you. You realize that fluency is not a performance, it's a reflection. It mirrors how much of yourself you've allowed to flow into the language. You remember the early days, the awkward pauses, the heavy effort, the constant need to check if you were saying it right. But the city has taught you something grammar never could. Fluency doesn't belong to those who memorize. It belongs to those who trust. Every time you hesitated, the city reminded you. Life doesn't wait for perfect words. It moves, breathes, responds. The voice you speak with now carries all your moments of courage. Every attempt, every small victory, every mistake you dared to make. English became your companion, not your challenge. It became a mirror that reflected not who you were when you began, but who you've become through persistence. Sometimes you catch yourself thinking in English even when you're alone. It doesn't feel forced anymore. It feels like two worlds coexisting inside you. One silent, one expressive, both yours. You think in one language, feel in another, and live in both. That's the hidden beauty of learning a language through immersion. It expands your identity, stretches the boundaries of who you are. You stop obsessing over how you sound. You start caring more about what you mean. That's when your voice gains power. People respond not to your accuracy, but to your presence. You speak with calmness, with rhythm, with authenticity, because you're no longer pretending. The city still speaks, but now it listens back. Every interaction becomes a reflection of this quiet transformation. You're no longer chasing English. You're speaking with it, as if it's been waiting for you to stop trying so hard. And in the sound of your own voice, clear, imperfect, alive, you hear something greater than fluency. You hear belonging, between silence and meaning. The more fluent you become, the quieter your mind gets. You used to fill every silence with thought, every pause with translation. Now, silence feels different. It's not emptiness, it's space, a place where words grow before they're spoken. You walk through a narrow alley in the late afternoon. The light flickers on the wet pavement. The world feels distant, calm, observant. You hear English everywhere, not as noise, but as melody. The laughter from the cafe carries emotion you can now interpret without thinking. A man says, "Take your time" to a friend, and you understand the kindness in his tone, not just the meaning of the phrase. This is the hidden layer of language, the one that exists beneath sound. The pauses, the breaths, the glances. They speak louder than words. You realize that fluency is not just about expression, it's about perception. The ability to read what's unspoken, to understand what's implied. You remember when you used to fear silence. You thought it meant failure, a sign that your vocabulary was too small. But now you know silence is part of communication. It's where empathy lives. When you pause, you give others space to breathe, to think, to exist. That's when connection deepens. The city mirrors this perfectly. Between the chaos of honking cars and hurried voices, there's always a still point, a quiet corner, a brief stop at a red light, a stranger's smile. In those seconds, language dissolves, and what remains is presence. That's what you've been learning all along. Not how to fill silence, but how to listen within it. You find that the more comfortable you are with silence, the more powerful your words become. You start to notice that confident speakers don't rush. They let the air carry their message. They allow rhythm to do the work. English is not a race, it's a cadence. The next time you talk, you pause intentionally. You feel your sentences breathe. You realize that language, like music, needs silence to exist. Without pause, there's no melody. Without silence, there's no meaning. The city continues to hum around you, but now you walk within its rhythm. A rhythm made of noise and quiet, of motion and stillness. Between silence and meaning, you've found the space where real understanding begins. When you become the city, you wake up one morning and realize the city no longer feels foreign. You know its smells, its colors, its sounds. But more than that, you understand its language, not through words, but through feeling. You walk with ease. You order coffee without hesitation. You overhear conversations not as study material, but as stories. And then something unexpected happens. You start teaching others without realizing it. Someone asks for directions, and you respond with the same calm confidence that once intimidated you. A friend asks you how you learned English, and you don't know what to say, because you didn't just learn it, you lived it. You've become part of the city's dialogue. Another voice among millions, shaping the language as much as it shaped you. Every accent adds something new. Every mistake evolves meaning. You understand now that language isn't owned by natives or by books. It belongs to everyone who uses it to connect. You remember your first day, the confusion, the noise, the insecurity. Now those memories feel distant, like a story someone else once lived. You smile at how far you've come, not in vocabulary, but in comfort. English isn't effort anymore, it's expression. You start noticing something beautiful. You think in English when you're dreaming, when you're walking, when you're quiet. The rhythm has merged with your own heartbeat. The boundaries between languages have faded. You no longer live in English, you live through it. Every conversation feels like a shared melody. The city speaks through you, and you answer without fear. You realize that this was never just about learning a language. It was about learning to listen, to observe, to connect. You pass by the same corner where your journey began. The city sounds the same, but you hear it differently now. Because when you listen long enough, when you stay open, when you stop chasing perfection, something magical happens. You don't just understand the city, you become part of its voice. And that's when you finally understand the truth you've been walking toward all along. You were never learning English. You were learning how to hear the world.